Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AFSEE application webinar. I'm Professor Amina Ishkanian, and I am the Executive Director of the Atlantic Fellows for Social and Economic Equity Program, AFSEE. I am pleased to be joined with a couple of my colleagues here, and I'll introduce them in a minute. So the purpose of this webinar is to provide you with further information on the application process, the how, the where, and the when to apply. And we will also be providing some tips and suggestions on how you can strengthen your application, and also information about the selection process and where you can get some further information and support. So the plan is that each of us will present, and then we will have some time for question and answers. So we would ask that you keep your questions in this webinar specifically focused on the application process. We did have another webinar that was held last month in October, where we provided further information about the AFSEE program. We will be putting that a link to that video in the chat box, and we would encourage you, if you had questions that are not specifically about the application process, that you do consider watching that video. Furthermore, we kindly request that the questions are put in the Q&A function are more general questions, as we are unable to answer during this webinar very specific individual eligibility questions. So if you have a general question around the application process, then we are, of course, more than happy to take that. So just a bit of housekeeping. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and barring any technical difficulties, the webinar will be uploaded to our website. As I said, if you have questions that are about the application process, kindly type them into the Q&A panel, and we will make our best effort to address as many of your questions as possible. If you would like, and we request that you include your name and where you're based in the question. And if you can, also keep your questions brief so that we can address the most number of questions as possible. So that's it from me in terms of webinar housekeeping. I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, Julia and Tom, who will introduce themselves, and we'll get started. Julia, please.
Hi, my name is Julia Ring. I am the Program Officer for the Atlantic Fellows for Social and Economic Equity Program at LSE. I will be dealing with administrative, operational, and logistics issues during the fellowship experience, and you will likely, if you email the AFSEE team inbox, you will likely be receiving an answer from me. So thank you for joining us. Tom?
Hi, everybody. My name's Tom, and I work in LSE's Graduate Admissions Office. I am a selector, so I am the person who goes through applications, judging them against our criteria, and then making a decision.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Julia. And so we begin with how, where, and when to apply. Julia, I think this was you? Or no, me, sorry. So the program is structured that we recruit annually a maximum of 18 fellows. And we have been getting quite a lot of applications year on year. And so if you have joined this application webinar, this is the first step in writing a strong application to make your application competitive. So the program is based at the International Inequalities Institute, and we bring together research, education, and practice. And our aim is to create, at the end of the program, a group of fellows, a cohort of fellows, as well as a larger community of fellows who are actively working on social and economic inequalities through a values-led approach which centers fairness, commitment, curiosity, kindness, and courage. So the applications are made via the LSE's Graduate Admissions System. And you complete the application form and the supporting documents through the Graduate Admissions portal. Those are then assessed by the graduate admission selector and also passed on to the AFSEE team, a long list. If the application is successful after the long list, shortlisted applicants are then invited to interview. To begin your application, please follow the link on the apply page of the AFSEE website, which we have on this slide, but we have put in the chat, and that will take you to the page that you need to go to. And when to apply, this is a very important question because the applications are open now, but our deadline for applications is 5 p.m. GMT on the 10th of January 2025. We cannot accept any late applications, so we ask that if you are interested in applying, that you start early to gather all the paperwork, to work on your statement of purpose, to get your transcripts, to get your references, everything in one place. So please bear in mind, we are unable to accept any late applications, and that deadline is a final one. So next slide, please.
Okay, that's me now.
That's you.
Armina. So in order to complete your application form, you will need the following information. Firstly, you will need to nominate 2 referees. And as soon as you add their contact details onto the application form, they will be notified directly via LSE to the email address that you provide. We'll give further information about who referees should be and what information they'll need to provide in the next slides. You will need to also upload documents confirming your qualifications, or in the case of applicants for the non-residential program that do not hold a degree, you will need to submit a statement stating that you do not hold an undergraduate degree. You will need to upload a statement of academic purpose, which we will elaborate on in a second. You will also need to upload a CV in addition to filling out details in the application form about your previous education. And finally, you will need to prove that you meet LSE's English language requirements. For the English language requirements, please note that applicants are not required to sit an English language test before they submit an application. However, we expect all applicants to find out whether they need to sit an English language test, and if so, where the test can be taken, how often these tests are provided, and what type of preparation is required. Knowing this is really important because these tests may be held in different areas to the one you live in, or take place only once a month, or even less often. So if your application is successful and you receive an offer that requires you to take an English language test to prove that you meet LSE's English language requirements, AFSEE will then be able to reimburse the costs for taking those tests. I'm going to pass over on to Tom now.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, everyone. Welcome again. Today, I'm going to talk very briefly about how to put together a strong application for the Atlantic Fellows residential and non-residential programs. So here on your screens is an outline of what we'll discuss today. So we'll cover how to write a strong statement of academic purpose, also known as a personal statement. I'll explain what a competitive CV should look like. I'll also talk about transcripts, which are particularly important for those of you who may be considering the residential program. And finally, I'll talk about how to ensure your references will be of good quality and work well in your favor. Next slide, please. Thank you. So let's start with the statement of academic purpose. So some of you may already know this as a personal statement, but we at LSE like to refer to this as a statement of academic purpose because we notice that the impersonal statement may give the wrong idea of what's expected in a strong statement for an application. So it's common for many applicants to assume their statements should be filled with many personal stories or anecdotes, but really it's crucial that applicants understand that selectors are really looking for strong evidence that points to academic suitability, and in the case of AFSEE, evidence that your professional experience is relevant and matches AFSEE expectations. There may be personal elements to your statement, but it's important that you always bring it back to why you're suitable for the program. So with that said, the first thing to consider is to keep your statement between 1,000 and 1,500 words. There isn't a fixed word limit, but this is really preferable. Try to be concise and focus mainly on your academic interests and any goals you want to achieve through completing the program, or for the non-residential, mostly your work experience and your suitability. So selectors want to see that you have thought carefully about applying to the program, and they want to be convinced that both you and the program are right for each other. To do this, you need to be very clear about the reasons you're applying to AFSEE before or during the process of writing your statement. It can be helpful to jot down 1 or 2 or 3 ideas and primary reasons for why you're applying. This can be helpful if you keep them next to you and reminding you as you go through the process of writing the statement of what really matters. So selectors also want to see that you engage with the details of the program, but especially that you follow the specific guidance for writing your AFSEE statement. I'm referring to the statement guidance you'll see on the application form. For applicants to the non-residential track, you'll need to highlight an area of socioeconomic inequality that you currently engage in. You should also give concrete and convincing examples of how you've contributed to projects that seek to address inequalities. Make sure you explain the nature of the project you want to undertake during the fellowship, and be sure it aligns with at least one of the International Inequalities Institute, the III, research themes. These themes can be found on the III website, but I'll call some out for your benefit. There's the gender, justice and well-being economy, opportunities, mobility, and intergenerational transmission of inequality, perceptions of inequality, politics of inequality, public economics of inequality, and wealth, elites, and tax justice. So as you prepare your statement, keep these themes in your mind, sorry. At the end of your statement of academic purpose, you should clearly explain in 2 paragraphs the project you are planning to undertake as part of the non-residential program. Finally, remember to explain your goals, what you want to achieve in 5 years of completing the program. I've noticed that applicants often leave this section out. We want a clear idea of what you hope to achieve, what you hope to be doing 5 years in the future, and how AFSEE will help you achieve that goal. So for those interested in the residential track, you should follow the same guidance, but instead of detailing the project you wish to undertake, you should clearly and concisely explain in 1 or 2 paragraphs what MSc dissertation you plan to undertake as part of the requirements for the MSc in Inequalities and Social Science. You should also detail what academic knowledge you would like to gain from the MSc and how this academic knowledge will contribute to your future work. Selectors want to see that you engage with academic material in a clear and critical manner, because this is what your lecturers will expect you to demonstrate in your essays during the master's program. Finally, make sure to explain your wider research interests and why they make you a suitable candidate for the AFSEE residential program. Now, before I move on, this is quite important. I'd like to explain something that tends to weaken a statement, and that's describing rather than explaining in statements. So it's very easy to write a purely descriptive statement where you mention things like, I went to this university, studied this subject, then I worked 4 or 5 years at this company, and then I received this award. I understand that's saying something, but it's also not really saying a lot. Explanation in a statement of academic purpose is about elaborating on the significance of professional activities or academic work that you've done in relation to the fellowship. Like, how has that made you suitable? What experiences or skills has this imparted that will make you successful on the program and make you successful in your career to come? Now, one way of avoiding writing a disappointing statement is to conduct thorough research on the program and read all program pages carefully to identify information about the structure and courses on offer. You should show that you've read details about the program and the modules and can explain why a particular module or aspect of the fellowship is of interest to you. Now, please don't make your statement generic. Almost everyone will write about how they're interested in addressing inequalities. We need more focus than that. You should highlight what makes you and your academic and professional background stand out. That's important. And you can do this by giving examples that are unique to your work and unique to you. This is a personal gripe. Please try not to start your statement with a cliche quotation. It really doesn't add anything and it takes up valuable word count. I would also recommend that you don't include excessive personal stories, like I've said before, about your life unless they are central to your professional work and your motivations for pursuing the program. Now, while selectors don't want to read excessively long statements, they also don't want to read extremely short statements. Selectors want to see that you've put significant effort into writing the statement of academic purpose, that you can be concise and convey the information that needs to be conveyed in a short word count. And that's so yes, please not short, not too long. Please also make sure your statements are proofread. If you can, you could ask a trusted friend or family member to have a read through to make sure it makes sense. You should also try to read your statement multiple times before submitting to ensure there are no spelling or grammatical errors. If you have access to a printer, I would recommend printing them out and going through them aloud. I find that that's a very easy way to spot problems with the flow or just errors in the statement. That can be easily rectified. Next slide, please. So the next thing is CVs. Your CV is very important alongside the statement. It's what helps you really stand out. So please treat the quality of your CV seriously. As some of you may know, the AFSEE programs expect suitable candidates to have a minimum of 7 years of professional experience. This means you need to write your CV in a way that clearly captures the length of your professional experience, clearly communicates it. Don't write long sentences to describe your positions. Please keep your CV concise as possible. Try to use bullet points instead to describe your role. Your CV should ideally be 2 pages maximum. If you can limit it to 1 page, then that's great. Anything longer than 2 pages, it can often look a bit excessive, and it says to me that perhaps you're not being as concise as you can be. Don't feel you must describe every single aspect of your position in the CV. Remember, the statements give you an opportunity to elaborate on the nature of your professional experience and its role in preparing you for the fellowship. So don't over-explain in the CV. And also, and this is key, you should aim to tailor your CV to AFSEE requirements. If you've done 15 different jobs in your life so far, you don't necessarily have to include them all in your CV. You should identify those that seem most impactful or relevant to the AFSEE program. Now, moving on to disappointing CVs. One type of disappointing CV is one that includes pictures. Please, no pictures of yourself or your pets or anything else. This just serves as a distraction and it's not relevant to your application, so please avoid including them. Another type of disappointing CV is one that lists positions but doesn't provide dates or times. This is crucial. If you don't provide the dates of your role, and this could just be the month and the year, it's very difficult to assess whether you have the 7+ years of experience. So we really need you to be very clear in communicating the time that you've spent in particular roles. Other aspects of disappointing CVs include disclosing personal characteristics, such as marital status or the number of children that you have. This isn't information that would ever be useful to selectors who are looking for relevant information only, that information that points to your suitability for the AFSEE program. And lastly, of course, just like the statement of academic purpose, please try to avoid spelling errors and grammatical errors in your CV. Next slide, please. So now moving on to transcripts and information regarding previous study. So if you're applying for the residential track of the AFSEE program, please ensure you provide your degree transcripts. This is important to use for confirming if you meet the academic requirement for the master's component of the fellowship. When uploading your transcripts, please make sure you provide all pages of your transcripts to allow selectors to have a comprehensive view of your academic journey. And to note, this is something that Julia said, but I'll just elaborate on quickly. We're perfectly happy for you to upload transcripts provided to you by your university at the end of your degree. And we're also happy for you to translate the transcripts yourself, but please note that you must upload a translation with the original transcripts if they're in a language other than English. An official transcript means that it's sent from your previous institution to the LSE admissions department, and we will need an official transcript if you are successful and you receive an offer. And more information on this is available on the LSE Graduate Admissions website. Now, if you don't have previous degrees, you can, of course, still apply to the AFSEE program, but you may be better suited to the non-residential program than the residential. So I advise that you go onto the AFSEE website and you have a good look at the requirements and try to work out whether you think you are better suited to the non-residential because of your academic background. Now, if for any reason you do not have a transcript, just like Julia said, when you come to upload your transcripts on the application form, just upload a brief note confirming that you don't have previous degrees and therefore can't provide a transcript. That's completely fine. The selector will understand. Next slide, please. So now moving on to references. When filling out the application on the admissions portal, you'll be asked to provide the name and email addresses of 2 referees. And please note that if they're academic referees, their official institutional email address is required. Once you have completed the references section, like Julia said, your referees will receive an automatic email asking them to submit their references through the portal. Now, when selecting referees, please take this seriously and make careful decisions. Your referees must know you well enough to write in considerable detail about your abilities and motivations. If it's an academic referee, they can be an academic tutor or a lecturer. They should know about your academic strengths and should be able to speak convincingly about them. If you're applying to the residential track, try to make sure that one of them is an academic reference. That's advantageous, but it's not absolutely necessary. Now, if it's a professional reference, your referee should be someone like a supervisor or a line manager who has worked closely with you and has a good understanding of your professional commitments and goals. Please contact your referees much in advance of the application deadline. Please remember that it is your sole responsibility to ensure that they submit their references before the application deadline. If you apply before the application deadline, but your references are not submitted by the deadline, the application will not be released for consideration until after the references have been received and processed. Now, please, and this is important, please make sure that your chosen referees have seen your application materials beforehand and they understand why you're applying to the AFSEE program. I would recommend that you send them your CV and a copy of your statement to review and maybe a little list of some of the key details that you would like them to write about. That will help them write the best possible statement for you. Next slide, please. So, just to briefly sum up, please do your research on the program before applying. It's important that you understand what each of the fellowship tracks entails, because if you have a poor understanding of each of the programs, it can and likely will manifest in your statement, and that's unlikely to work in your favor. Please also make sure you complete all aspects of the application. Be sure to contact referees beforehand so they have enough time to write their references. Please know that it's your responsibility to notify and nudge your referees to make sure they submit as early as possible. Regarding your statements, you should proofread them after you've completed the drafts. Check multiple times that the language, grammar, and punctuation are of good quality. Keep it simple, keep it concise. Don't add excessive information. With every sentence, please ask yourself, is it relevant? Does it serve a purpose? Now, finally, just to note, again, there's no application fee, so don't worry about payment. But if you apply to one AFSEE program as a first choice and a non-AFSEE program as your second choice, you will be required to pay an application fee of £90 for the other program. If you feel that you don't have enough funds to cover the application fee, you can request an application fee waiver. There's a form you'd have to fill in on the graduate admissions website. One thing to consider, and this goes back to English language requirements, is if you are successful, UK visa regulations require that you sit an English language test run by an approved provider, for example, the IELTS. More information is available just by Googling English language requirements LSE and following the top links. As Julia said, please make sure to try to sort this out as early as possible. And then on a final note, once you've applied, please make sure you check the graduate admissions portal for information about the progress of your application. You may not get a decision immediately after your application is released, but please keep checking the program of your application. There is no need to contact the AFSEE team or LSE Graduate Admissions to check on the status of your application. It will be assessed if everything is received. So with that, I'm sorry for joining on so long. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the selection process and timeline. So as mentioned, the applications for the 2025-26 fellowship intake close on the 10th of January 2025 at 5 p.m. UK time. And there's a second deadline, which has been mentioned 1 week later for references to be submitted. As mentioned, this deadline is really important, as without both references being submitted to your application, we will not be able to move on with the application to the next process. Once the application portal closes and we receive your references, a shortlisting process takes place. We plan for shortlisted candidates to be notified and invited to an interview in March 2025, with the interviews taking place at the end of March. The shortlisted applicants will then receive their final decision notification in April 2025, and we will introduce our new fellows on our website and social media channels in June. Now, please remember that it takes time to write a good application and for you to request the necessary documents from your previous institutions and to chase referees. LSE will also be closed between the 23rd of December and 1st of January for winter break. So if you have any questions that you need to ask the AFSEE team or the graduate admissions team, you will need to have those questions asked between those dates. So again, please start your application as early as possible. The deadlines we've set out here are available on our website and are final. We cannot amend these deadlines under any circumstances. So please ensure to submit your applications by the 10th of January and get your referees to submit their references by the 17th of January. Before we go on to the Q&A section of the webinar, I just want to remind you that you can contact the AFSEE team via email and as well as contact the AFSEE ambassadors who are senior AFSEE fellows, also via email, and they will be able to provide more information about the experience of being an AFSEE fellow. I also run weekly drop-in sessions every Thursday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. UK time on Zoom. The information on how to register for those is on our website. These are opportunities for you to ask any questions about the application process to me, and they will be every single week until December, the end of December 2024. You can, of course, also reach out to us and find out any updates about events via our social media accounts. And you can sign up to AFSEE newsletters and the International Inequalities newsletters as well. Links to those are provided in the chat and can be found on our website. Okay, over to you, Armina.
Thank you, colleagues, for that great presentation. So if you have questions, and I see that some have already started using the Q&A function, please put those questions in the Q&A box. Please note that we won't be able to answer specific eligibility questions in this webinar, but you can email those questions to those addresses that Julia just mentioned, or you can ask them in the Zoom drop-in sessions that Julia runs. So please bear that in mind in terms of our ability to answer the questions. We also, at the start of this webinar, I mentioned that in October, we had a separate webinar which focused on the program. So we have answered many questions in that, and we do urge that you have a look at that video. Okay, I am now going to start with the Q&A function, and I will join colleagues as and where needed. So the first question that I see, it says, anonymous attendee, can I apply to the non-residential track if I hold a master's degree? And the answer is yes, you may apply to the non-residential track if you hold a master's degree. It would be good in your statement of academic purpose if you explained your motivation for joining the non-residential track. Is there any value in sitting a GRE exam? We at AFSEE don't require a GRE. So, should you want to do it for yourself, you can, but it's not going to add any weight to your application from our side. Question from an anonymous attendee. How can I figure out what a 2-1 or 2-2 degree equivalent is in my country? Tom, can I turn to you on that question, please?
Yeah, of course. So there is a section of the graduate admissions website where you can check equivalent qualifications. Just go on. It's very easy to find. It's on the LSE Graduate Admissions website. Also, don't worry, we also have this information, a far more detailed version of that information. So I'll be able to assess whether you fit, whether you meet the minimum requirement.
Thank you, Tom. That's really helpful. A question from Leora, who says they started filling in their application, but it was deleted, can't access at all. Okay, Julia, you're responding to that. Thank you. Question from Diego from Costa Rica. On the website, it is stated that the references ideally should be academic. Is this a requirement, or professional references are also suitable? So I think Tom answered that question already. So, for the non-residential track, we do understand that, some people may not have academic references. For the residential track, if you could have one, I think, that is a good idea. Question from anonymous attendee. Can I apply for the non-residential track if I will be in another part-time modular master's program at the LSE if selected? The answer is no, because the program runs on its own schedule, and you would be required to attend modules at particular times. And if you were interested in doing a master's degree, then the expectation would be that you would apply to the residential track and undertake the MIS program, the Masters in Inequalities and Social Science. Question from Uma from India. Do I need to be already admitted to the MSc program to be eligible for the fellowship, or can I apply for both side by side? I think you have to apply to the AFSEE program directly. If you've only applied to the MIS program, then that does not necessarily guarantee you entry into the AFSEE program. You have to apply to AFSEE separately. Question from Sipo from South Africa. Do I need an undergraduate qualification for the residential stream? Yes, you do. Not for the non-residential, but for the residential, you do. Question from Alistair in the US. Question, this is for you, Tom. It says, do we send the transcript direct to LSE from the university they attended?
So if you are so at first, if you have your transcripts on your computer, when you apply, you can just upload the transcript that you have. That's fine. If you are successful, you will need to ask your university to send your transcript to LSE, to the Graduate Admissions Office. That's how we make sure that it's all to do with fraud checks. So that's how we make sure that it's an official transcript. And that is non-negotiable. It has to come from your institution. If something has happened, like I mentioned, where that just is absolutely impossible, then please do get in touch and we'll see what we can do about that.
Thanks, Tom. Tom, I'm going to turn the next question to you because graduate admissions might have a policy. So the question is from Rana, and it says, can we use AI to avoid spelling errors, grammatical errors, and even enhance our writing? Do we have a policy on
That's a
that?
slightly existential question. So we do not have a line on this, really. Well, we do.
Okay.
You're not supposed to use AI. When you submit your application, you will be asked if everything about your application is entirely your own work, and that an AI falls under the bracket of not your own work. I understand that, how are we defining AI here? Is that right-click synonym? Obviously not, but things like ChatGPT, I would recommend that you do not use them. And I do not mean this as a slight on anybody who does use ChatGPT to enhance their writing, but I think there is a question here about academic integrity that needs to be asked. Um, this is about, if we need to see that you have the skills, you have the ability yourself to critically reflect, engage with the material, and write well. They are important skills, and I really don't think we should be outsourcing them to AI technology. I don't think that will help anyone go, in the future going forward. So you're not allowed to use AI, and I would also strongly advise that you don't do it as well.
Thank you, Tom. That's really helpful. And I think we're probably going to get questions like that more going into the future as AI um, becomes more ubiquitous. Thank you. So the next question is from Ife. Question is, if holding more than one degree is the most recent acceptable, or are all transcripts required? I believe the question, I believe it's all transcripts are required.
Yes,
Yes.
they are, because that can cause issues around getting a visa if you haven't declared previous periods of study. So yes, everything is required.
Yes, that's what I assumed. Okay. Thank you. The next question is from anonymous attendee from West Africa. Do candidates with two bachelor's degrees stand a chance at the residential program? This is a tricky question because, it is very competitive. Um, Last year we had nearly 700 applications for 18 places. So we do pay attention not just to the transcript, but to the statement of academic purpose, CV, and so forth. So it has been in the past possible to make special cases, but these are, the exceptions, not the rule. So to enhance the stronger applications for the residential track tend to meet the eligibility criteria of 2-1. So, but I don't want to rule it out entirely because there have been exceptions in the past that have been made. That is on a case-by-case basis, and that's not something that can be guaranteed that will happen. A question from Toluwalope. Question is, my undergraduate degree was taken in English language, and I have a letter from the university to prove this. Can this be an alternative to writing an English test later? I'm afraid not. As Tom explained, the UK visa regime does require that the approved language test is taken and submitted. So a letter from your university wouldn't be able to. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, can I just jump in there?
Yes.
There are cases when you can when studying in English will suffice. And this is quite terrible, but we have no control over it. So the UK, there are a list of countries that the UK visa office consider having English as their first language. Many countries that don't appear on that list, and it's very unfortunate. But I'm afraid that this comes down to visa requirements. So if your country does not appear on that list, even if you studied in English and it has English as its first language, you must sit a test to meet the visa requirements. If you studied, I think this is right, Julia, for 3 years at an English language institution in a UK VI acceptable country, then I think that does mean that you don't have to sit an English language test.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not even sure about the amount of years, but yeah, we can send over the link with the English language requirements that are explained on LSE website. Definitely have a look through those. But in any other scenario, your offer will state that you need to provide an English language proof of English language. I'm not sure. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, I will send that over in the chat in a second.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Tom. So the next question is from Gitika. Excuse me. This question asks, I have done a master's in chemistry. Will that be a hindrance to my application as my master's degree is on a very different topic? This is an interesting question because we've had people from non-social science backgrounds apply. I think I would say two things. Number one, in the statement, you should explain why you want to do the AFSEE program very clearly and to demonstrate at least the minimum requirement of work experience on social and economic inequalities, as again, per the selection criteria. So that's very important. And also to explain, how do you feel, why your motivation to shift from working chemistry, which is a STEM science, to something which is, somewhat different, particularly in the social science field. So it will be the statement of academic purpose where you explain your motivation, your readiness, but also demonstrate your work in social and economic equities for the minimum years required. What is the best way to secure a shortlist stage? Write a good application. That's the best way. If I have an MPhil, can I apply? This is a question from an anonymous attendee. If I have an MPhil, can I apply for the residential track? So, we've had this question before, and I think, if you have a PhD or an MPhil, you should explain in your application, again, in your statement of purpose, academic purpose of why is it that you want to study for another master's? Because our program is about enhancing access, giving access to those individuals who have not had previous opportunities for postgraduate study. So, if you have already gone on and done a PhD, the question is, well, why would you, want to apply and for a fully funded place? So I think that would need to be very clearly explained and justified. So you can apply, but it would have to, you would have to make a very, very strong case for that. The question from Subra Jyoti, do I need to have an IELTS score before the application? What is the IELTS score cutoff for the application? Is there any cutoff for subsets? I'm not sure I can answer the question about subsets. Julia or Tom?
You do not need to have an IELTS score before application, as I highlighted, but the cutoff date, there's no fixed date, but we basically would need a result by August for the September start. I would recommend that.
But
Tom,
sooner the better, I
of course,
think.
the sooner the better. Yeah, definitely do not wait until August. But that August, like the absolute cutoff date. Tom, any additional info on that?
No, just to say, please do it as early as possible, like we said, because it can cause visa problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And your offer will only be conditional until that's met. So if you require that. Okay, thank you. Question from Rana. Can I apply to both tracks? Yes, you can apply to both tracks. We would prioritize, and this is an important point, if you do decide to apply for both tracks, you can put them in the order that you prefer, and that's how it will be considered. Question from anonymous attendee. Is there a particular format for the reference? Who, what address should be the reference addressed to? So we don't have a template that is filled out. There is some guidance in terms of what referees should address about, how long they've known you and so forth. And the reference should be addressed to the AFSEE program or LSE. I don't think, Tom, there's a requirement in terms of that. Okay. Thank you. The next question is from Monica. The question is for the non-residential program about the reference letters. I think we've answered this already in terms of, so it is in that who it should be from. Question from anonymous attendee. I have a question regarding transcript of education. Number one, is it a degree certificate? It's the transcript, so it's a list of your marks. Transcript of all education from I'm not clear on what you're asking this question. Do colleagues understand?
I'm not too sure what's being said here, but just to say your transcripts, as was said, is simply a list of the modules that you took and the grades you received in those modules. That's what we require when we say a transcript.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, question. So this is a question from Asanda from South Africa. If your reference is late or not submitted on time, can you change a reference? So as colleagues explained, the deadline for you to submit your materials is the 10th of January 2025. There is a week after a deadline for the references. If the references are not in by that date, then it will be too late for you to then get a reference and another person. So that's why, colleagues and I have been making it really, really emphasizing this point of please, please start early. It is your responsibility and not ours to nudge your references to referees. So please, if you are intending to apply, don't leave it late. Ensure that they know the deadline and that you are checking with them that they have submitted. So yeah, if they miss the second deadline, then it's too late. Yeah, Julia, sorry.
I just wanted to highlight that, yes, agree with everything Armina said, but you are able to check whether your referee has submitted their reference on the graduate admissions portal. So do look, not only chase them, but also look at that portal. You will be able to see this and change a referee's until they have submitted. So if they are not submitting, and you've not heard anything from them, you are able to change the person that will be a referee. And this is also even after you submit the application. So you just go back to the application portal. Yes.
But only until the deadline for
sorry,
the
until the
references.
deadline. Yeah. Until
Yeah.
the cutoff point. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So if that deadline has passed, you can't then make any changes. Okay. Thank you. Question from Eric from Ghana. Can I get the link to the application fee waiver form? Okay.
Put it in the chat.
We'll try to put that there. Question from Nabila from Morocco regarding the English language requirement. I have English proficiency certificate from my university. Is that enough? I've studied my MBA in English. Again, on the English language, I think, we have answered that question. It depends on the country and the university that you're applying from. And so I can't answer that question. I think we would need to check and where your MBA was studied and so forth. Question from anonymous attendee. What makes a good impact story to be showcased in the statement? Should it be changed at system or structural level or changes in policy? This is an interesting question, actually. Well, first of all, it has to be an authentic story, right? It has to be your experience. So I think when people write from their own experience, they write it more authentically. So think about what is the example of your past work experience that you are most proud of and that you want to bring and talk about, and use that. So, it's sometimes even a story of failure can be an impactful story because you can demonstrate how you attempted to change something but weren't able to. I think the key thing, and those of us who read applications have been doing it for many years. So, authenticity, honesty, genuine, kind of approaches are appreciated rather than, I think, Tom, you said this, generic applications or things that you think would be, kind of popular or something to share. So please just write from your experience, and if it's authentic, it will come across. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a success story. It can be a story of, making an effort and perhaps not achieving 100% of the goal. Tom, do you want to say anything to that? Because you're reading statements all the time.
Honestly, I think you summed it up perfectly there. It's honesty. Honesty is the thing that really, really shows in these applications. And if yeah, failure is it can often be a wonderful thing to write about because it shows growth. It shows that you're thinking about your development and it shows how you want to move forward. So talking about failures, I mean, if there's like something glaring on your transcript, for example, like maybe some marks in certain modules weren't what you hope they could be, that's not something that you necessarily have to shy away from. Honesty is really important to us, and we appreciate that kind of display, I think, of critical reflection and integrity as well.
Thank you, Tom. I'm glad you and I are on the same page on that. The next question I find very difficult to answer because I don't understand entirely what it's asking. It's a question from an anonymous attendee. Is there any support in terms of application for refugees living in London or maybe previous fellows if they volunteer? Could I recommend that this individual please email us separately so that we can have a chat because I don't want to give a wrong answer and I really don't understand what you're asking. So my apologies for that. The next question is also from an anonymous attendee. Do I have to apply first and secure admission from LSE for the program, or the application to AFSEE is the only application required at this stage? So it's one application, and it's if you're applying via the LSE Graduate Admissions portal, but you are applying and you put in, when it says your choice, you put in the AFSEE program. Question from anonymous attendee, would a postgraduate diploma be considered equivalent to an undergraduate 2-1 degree? No, that would not. Question from Gerel, if I chose the residential track, is it just one application through the portal or do I have to apply? It's one application through the graduate admissions portal and you put in AFSEE and residential track. Is there a way to send physical transcripts to you? One of my previous schools may not offer the facility of a digital copy for former students. Tom, does LSE, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but
We don't accept
no,
physical transcripts.
okay.
No, we don't. Again, AFSEE can often be quite a difficult one. So, if your university doesn't offer digital transcripts, then I would advise reaching out. But please do look into this beforehand. But as far as I am aware, we do not accept physical transcripts. So yeah, please get in touch.
Okay, that's interesting. We've moved fully digital. Okay.
And we do not oh, sorry,
sorry.
Armina. I think from my understanding, it's that we do not accept like transcripts to be posted because of like security reasons. But again, if that is the case, please reach out and there will be alternatives we can offer.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, the next question is from Samuel. Please, is every applicant going to send in their transcript or would it only be the residential? It's so as Julia explained and Tom also, if you're applying to the non-residential track and you do not have a transcript, you can just submit in writing a piece of paper that says, I don't have the transcript. I think that was guidance. For residential track applicants, it is required that you submit a transcript digitally. Question from anonymous attendee. Would a part-time job during my master's program be possible to be counted as professional experience as well? No, because you should have the minimum required years of experience prior to applying. So if you're doing work and hoping that counts towards your years, then no, that doesn't count. And in general, we don't recommend that fellows do a part-time job because the program is so intense. So, but a part-time job during your master's program to be counted as professional experience. Or maybe I misunderstood that.
I
think I did.
I think if it's part-time work during a previous degree and you're applying for a non-residential,
okay.
Yes, then yes, I think the key to highlight here is that it needs to the work that you've done, whether it's paid for, volunteering, whatever, needs to be around your experience of tackling or engagement with some kind of inequality. So that is the most important. And if it's a kind of a student union job or a part-time job that's involved with university work rather than like community work, that is something more tricky to decipher. But in general, various types of professional experience are, whether it's volunteering, part-time, full-time, are accepted.
Thank you, Julia, for saving me there because I think I had misunderstood the question.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question is from Lucian. Should referees complete their written statements ahead of the application deadline? Yes, but as we've been saying, the submission for the references is 1 week later, and all of that information about deadlines is on our website. But they must submit by that references deadline. How strict is LSE? Question from an anonymous attendee. How strict is LSE with minimum GPA requirements for the residential program when considering applications holistically? Is it a major determining factor? It is an important determining factor. It's not the only factor, but it is a very important determining factor. And therefore, to make a competitive application for the residential track, we do encourage that, that we do take into account the GPA. But yes, it's not the sole determining factor. The next question is from anonymous attendee. Can I have an academic reference from other universities living outside the country? Yes. And please, what is certain definition of professional reference? That would be someone that you have worked with and or are currently working with in a professional capacity. So that would include line manager or a director. Okay, question from Bharath from India. Currently, I'm in year 7 of my career. By the time program starts, I'll be completing minimum years of experience. Can I go ahead and apply? Yes, you can. And, obviously you've met the minimum, so I think it's important to also explain what you've done in that time. Yes, if you meet the minimum requirement, then you are eligible. Question from anonymous attendee. If I'm applying for both the AFSEE track of the MSc and the non-MSc, is it okay if my referee's reference is more tailored for the AFSEE track, or would they need to submit a separate reference? Tom, I think it's one reference, right?
It's just the one.
Mhm.
I think it's important that you explain to your referee that you're applying to both programs. And this goes for if you're applying to a second program that isn't AFSEE, so they're able to talk to the skills that are required, that the skills that you have and how they fit both programs. But obviously with AFSEE, there's a substantial amount of overlap, so I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Question from Bharath again. What is the selection ratio for the program? I think last year it was 3% were successful, so it's quite competitive. Question from Francis. When we do hear back on a decision, if we have gone through, when do we hear back? So as colleagues mentioned, please check on the portal. No, sorry, that's a question about decision. Julia, do you want to take that? Because
Sure. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So we are aiming to have our interviews for the shortlisted candidates at the end of March 2025. So if you make the shortlist, you will be notified of that at the beginning of March. After the interviews, we will make a final decision around April 2025. If you do not hear back regarding interviews as a shortlisted candidate, this by the start of March, you will receive a automatic response on your graduate admissions portal, notifying you that your application was not successful this time. So that is the timeline.
okay, great. Julie, do you want to take the next question, which is, does the PG Cert, Postgraduate Certificate in Social and Economic Equity, confer LSE student status and alumni status upon the completion?
Yes, it does. So you will be registered as a postgraduate student at LSE, undertaking a part-time program, and you will, once you completed the program successfully, you will have alumni rights as other alums have.
Okay, thank you. Great. A question from Mohammed about a specific question on his application. I think this is a question that others will have about graduating many years before and not being in touch with academic references. If that is the case and you have substantial work experience, we can accept the professional references. Um, So, question from anonymous attendee: what types of professional, academic, or lived experiences are considered relevant for the fellowship? Um, if I have a PhD focused on inequalities, would that count as relevant? Additionally, can other work experience, including roles or activities undertaken during my PhD, also be included when calculating total experience? So the question there would be, in terms of the experience, it is professional, it is academic, it is, lived experience, it is a wide range of things. If you have a PhD, again, if you're applying for this program, it would be important to explain the motivation and what you hope to gain and to build on already having gained a PhD. What is it that you're hoping to gain from AFSEE that you haven't already gained from the program? And this is not to say that we don't have people with PhDs who are fellows. We do. But the important bit is for you to explain in your statement of academic purpose about why, having gotten a PhD, why do you wish to continue, and how is the AFSEE program going to enhance and build on your existing knowledge and expertise? So I think I've already answered the question from anonymous attendee concerning the MPhil. And already I've answered the question, if do you qualify if you already have a master's degree or higher degree? Okay, question from Nicoletta. Question is, I hold an ECCTIS certificate. Would this suffice? I'm not familiar with that certificate. Colleagues, do you know what that certificate is?
Tom, any idea?
I would simply say, please go onto the LSE English Language Requirements website because it will give you a full list of the qualifications of the certificates that
Okay.
we're accepted. So please just see if ECTS is on there. Anything about English language requirements, I would advise you to look on the program. The information there is comprehensive.
Great. I think that's important. Thank you. So next question is from anonymous attendee. I have a UK visitor's visa. Would I need to apply for a UK study visa? I believe the answer is yes.
Depending which route you plan to apply for. So for the residential, you will require a student visa. And that will be why we're emphasizing so much about English language tests, because all of that you will be required to receive a student visa. And then with regards to non-residential, we as mere professional service staff cannot answer any visa related questions or advice, and there's a comprehensive team working at LSE that provides visa advice. So I can also send a link to get in contact with them, but generally our non-residential fellows will require some kind of whatever their normal way of entering the UK at every time they need to be in London for the modules. But I will post the link to the visa team for further information in the chat.
Thank you, Julia. That's really helpful. Question from Jasmine. Is having 2 graduate degrees an exclusion criteria or hindrance for the non-residential program? It's not an exclusion criteria per se, but again, back to the statement of academic purpose, please explain why you are keen to do the non-residential track, the project you wish to work on, and so forth. Question on English language. I'm again going to refer to the English language webpage that colleagues have referenced. Okay, so a question from anonymous entity. I have a master's from LSE, would like to apply for the non-residential track. Am I encouraged to apply, or is that a restriction? You can apply, indeed. Again, you would have to explain in your statement of academic purpose the motivation. and how this will enhance your knowledge and kind of the motivation and reason. And if you work for a, sorry, that just jumped. I lost where I was. Okay. I work as a researcher, so I'm not necessarily an activist founder of NGOs, as I see many participants are. Not all participants are working in NGOs or are activists. We do have people who are researchers, so that's not a reason not to apply. So please do consider if you're interested. Question from an anonymous attendee about lectures hardly sending out references through the school official email as the process is rigorous and static and sometimes non-functional. Will you accept reference letters from generic sources? I'm assuming this is a question about sending references from non-university or non-professional addresses, but rather personal ones. I think the preferred is from the university address or the professional. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. If what I've been advising, I think with Tom, we've discussed this before. If it's absolutely impossible for your referee to be using an email that is institutionally affiliated, please include a document in your application explaining that your referee doesn't currently have an institutional email address or something, and explain why, and use their personal email address, and we can then check if on the stage of making an offer and accepting the referees and all the different documents, we can see what we can do then, or simply email beforehand so we can figure out what the best way is forward. Tom?
Thank you.
Can I just jump in to say that we're talking about really exceptional circumstances here. If they work at an institution and they have an institutional email address, they must submit it with that email address. If you are successful, it's preferable if they do that from the beginning, because that it can slow down the if they have an institutional email address, I would recommend that they send it from that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm mindful of time. We've got down to the last 20 minutes, so I'm going to try to go very quickly. What type of project would you see as successful for the non-residential track? It's a project that you're passionate about that links to social and economic inequalities. We have made a video that we can put the link to in the chat that discusses the projects that senior fellows have worked on. But it should be something that is linked to your work that you're passionate about and willing to kind of develop over a period of a year. We have another question that we've already answered in terms of organizational email addresses. If that question was not answered in your specific case, Mehdi, please write to us specifically, and we'll try to answer your question. Okay, question about a non-residential program. Does the IELTS have to be academic or can it be general IELTS? I believe there's only one IELTS, but
I think it's academic, right, Tom?
academic, okay. Question, digital means scan copy, yes. Question from Moisa, what do you mean by people actively working on social inequalities issues? In other words, does a history of working on these issues count, or does someone have to be actively working on this issue to qualify? Well, I think that's an interesting question, but if you're not working on it, why would you be interested in applying? I think you have to demonstrate continued interest in working in this field. Otherwise, it becomes really unclear about the nature of the application. So in terms of the question from Annie about how the project needs to be aligned with the Institute's different research programs, doesn't have to be exactly aligned in the sense of working on the exact research that they are, but in order to find mentors that can support you during the fellowship, we need to know what you are working on. And if you have a look at the different research programs, from politics of inequality to wealth inequality to social mobility, then we can see, whether how your project could be mentored and supported. So it's about us being able to support you. But because, we have such a wide range of programs, research programs at the International Inequalities Institute, I think it's possible to fit your work generally if you're working on social and economic inequalities on one of those projects. Question from Lanja from Iraq. Does the non-residential track offer certificate? Yes. It's the postgraduate certificate in social and economic inequality. And yes, most people do the non-residential track while continuing with their day jobs. Minimum GPA requirement, Tom, I think it's a 3.5
Yes, but that depends on the country.
country.
So it has to be equivalent to a 2-1. Mentioned this earlier. Please go onto the graduate admissions website, and there you can find information about country equivalents.
Okay, thank you. I have answered the question about okay, is the non-residential program compatible with part-time work? Have answered that. Question from Subrajad. We didn't have the GPA system. Can I apply for the residential program? You can, and again, there are equivalences in different countries. As Tom mentioned, please check that out. Does the project for the non-residential program need to be solutions focused? No, it doesn't need to be solutions focused, but it does need to be focused on an aspect of social and or economic inequality. Can the professional references be from the same organization? I guess, yes, if you've worked there for quite a long period of time. Question from anonymous attendee. Can my professional reference be my research principal investigator? Yes. Question from John. Do you need to submit an English language proficiency result or scores if you have attained your bachelor's degree in English from Ghana? Again, reference, please check that requirement on our website. Question from anonymous attendee. The expectations and eligibility criteria for the residential track are quite clear. However, the non-residential tracks seem a bit ambiguous. Could you please provide further clarification on what is expected for the non-residential track, including the specific eligibility requirements and commitments involved? So we have, in terms of the commitments involved, we've discussed this in the video that was made for a previous webinar. So I'm not going to respond to that, and you can look at that video. In terms of the eligibility requirements, I think, it was discussed during this webinar that we are looking for a strong academic purpose, statement of academic purpose that demonstrates your commitment to working on social and economic equity, your minimum years of experience, which is evidenced through that statement, but also through your CV. And so, and we're also looking for a clear idea of a project that you want to work on. So all of those things added up together will demonstrate kind of a strong application. Question, if you're applying for the non-residential track, do you need a transcript to be submitted? If you have that, then yes, it should be submitted. This is an interesting one. Does the PG cert allow a person to apply to the MSc in inequalities in the future with any transferable credit at an accelerated rate? No, you would still need an undergraduate degree. A PG cert would not be enough to apply for a master's program. Question from Kawisa, would those on the non-residential program receive a master's award? No, it's a postgraduate certificate, which is not the same. Okay, so question from Olufunemi. I don't think I had come to your question. I looked through the profiles of past fellows and observed there were not many Nigerians based in Nigeria that were accepted. I actually just saw one. The rest were based in other countries and quite a number were non-residential. This gives me great concerns. I would like to know if Nigerians are actually given equal opportunities. Quite frankly, I find your question slightly problematic because we do have Nigerians who have applied and have been given equal opportunities. So I think everyone in every country is given the equal opportunity. So I'm sorry that you have gotten that impression, but I don't agree with your comment there. Question from anonymous attendee. For the statement of academic purpose, is it acceptable to use bullet points to organize information, or should it follow strictly narrative format? I would say my preference is a narrative format. Bullet points are not acceptable. Do you have a sample of a good statement of academic purpose that you can share? No, because of data protection and privacy, we cannot share that material. I have currently reinstated application with LSE. I have a previous offer from LSE, now reinstated. Do I need to submit new references if I apply for AFSEE? My response would be yes, because we would want that referee to speak to the AFSEE program rather than a generic reference. I've noticed that several past AFSEE fellows from my country have worked on similar social issues that I currently work on. Would this affect my application? Well, I think if you're applying and again, each application is regarded in its own right. So it's not necessarily going to rule you out, but you can explain in your statement of academic purpose about why you're applying and the merits of your application. So it doesn't rule you out. Okay. Do we need to, that's being answered. The Pakistan GPA question is, please look at GPA equivalences on our website. Okay, question. Are documents that I sent in a previous application last year counted, or should I send them again? You will have to submit them again. That we can't go and retrieve a past application. It will need to be part of the current application. If question from Winnie, if I apply for the residential, can the review team bump me to the non-residential or vice versa based on how they view the application? It generally works from the residential into the non-residential, and that has happened before. But to boost your chances, please, if you are interested in being considered for the residential and the non-residential, please apply for both. Don't leave it to chance. Finally, can I have the interview before submitting the application? No, you cannot have the interview before submitting the application. Because as I mentioned, we do receive quite a substantial number of applications, and it's not possible to interview applicants that are not shortlisted. Question from Farah. Those of us who had to take time off work due to illness, would this count against our application? Well, no, I mean, but if you demonstrate that you have at least that minimum level of experience, we would require that. We won't penalize you for having taken time off. But if you don't have the required experience, then it doesn't meet our eligibility criteria. Question from Gloria. Yes, we've answered that question, that if you have lost touch with your academic references, you can submit professional references. How many applications are expected? I don't know. Last year we had nearly 700, and the applications offers remain static. That is 18 maximum per year. So yeah, it's quite competitive. Okay. Wow, we did get through questions. I thought we wouldn't. Okay, more questions. To maximize your chance of acceptance, which option should you choose? Really difficult to say because both are competitive, but I would say perhaps I'll apply to both. That would maximize your opportunity. Okay. I'm sorry if I had not seen your question because there have been 125 questions. So my apologies if I missed your question. But there have been Nigerian fellows on our program. And so please do not take this as not accepting. Question, if you get accepted to the program and due to unforeseen circumstances, you're unable to attend. This is a difficult question. Generally, we don't support deferrals except in very, very exceptional circumstances because we make offers based on, a cohort. And so we would recommend that only apply if you are prepared to do the degree at the time. If you are, if there is a very exceptional circumstance, that we can take that into account. But generally, we do prefer not to defer applicants because we do accept based on a cohort selection. And so that is something we do consider. Okay. Last chance if people have any other questions. And just to say, we have received applications from all around the world, and in our community of fellows, we have fellows at present who represent 59 countries. So I just want to emphasize that we give all applications that meet the requirements equal attention, and we are very equity focused in our selection process. And we welcome applications from eligible applicants from every country in the world. So please, if you are interested, you think that this is the program for you, please do consider applying. And as again, we have information on how to reach us through the drop-in sessions, through the AFSEE website, through the email addresses, through our social media channels, including LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. And we also do have a frequently asked questions page. So please, if you have further questions, refer to that and also watch our webinar. I think we had final couple of questions, and I'm going to draw a line. So question on the residential track, do we have to detail research methodology methods at the application stage? No, you don't have to have that level of detail because it's expected that you will undertake methodology courses and learning during your master's and be able to do that. What kind of references can entrepreneurs use when applying? I think, again, if you have worked for individuals or professional references or academic references, those are possibilities. Finally, question, should you recommend to include in my CV part-time work? Yes, include anything that is relevant to your work on social and economic inequalities. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to my colleagues, Tom and Julia, and Saga, who's on the background, and Emma, for running the chat in such an excellent fashion. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again for your questions and your interest in the AFSEE program. We're always delighted to hear from you. So if we haven't managed to answer your questions, it's not in our first video and it's not on our frequently answered questions. Kindly do drop us an email and we will do our best to answer questions. All right, I'm going to draw this webinar to a close, and thank you again to everyone. I hope you all stay safe, stay well, and we will be in touch.